Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining today. We are gonna so today is our lesson 3, education for Nepal. So here's our past meeting or our past lesson. Feel free to check it out in our YouTube channel. Um yeah. So this is
Right.
today.
Yes, so we will start with some icebreakers. The first question is, what games do you like to play? And this includes both physical games and video games. Personally, I like to play Minecraft. Do you have any favorite games, Catherine? Or maybe are you too busy to play games?
Yeah, I'm too busy to play the game, but I like to play video game like the small game in the website when I was young. Like the little man Johnny running,
Oh
that
yeah,
kind
all
of
games.
game. Yeah.
Yes, let's see. Oh, nice. We already have two Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. Brawl Stars, it seems like Supercell's games are very popular. Subway Surfers, that's a classic game. Mobile Legends, I actually don't know what Mobile Legends is. Nice. We have three Subway Surfers now. Yes, feel free to respond in the chat. It seems like Supercell games are popular. Joshua, do you have a favorite game?
Yeah, so there's this game that requires like pure skill. Like the game graphics are pretty simple. Like the game itself is pure skills. It's called Osu. It's really easy to spell. OSU with an exclamation mark at the end. Basically, the game is really simple. Like circles pop up and you have to click on the circles. It's that easy. But like if you start playing it, like it's not the goal that matters. It's like
That sounds like a game for killing time.
it's the experience. No, no, no. It's the experience, like the experience you feel when you play the game, like immerses you so much that you don't remember anything else. All you can focus on is the clicking of your fingers.
Hey, well, let's see
Mm.
the chat. Somebody said crickets. Nice. It's rare now to see someone who likes sports over video games. More Subway servers and Rocket Box. I do not know what Rocket Ball is. Oh, Heyday. Nice. Heyday is also a Supercell game. So Supercell games are very popular. I think we can move on to the next question now.
Okay. So what is your guys' favorite animal? So for me, I really like bird, like or kind of bird. Um, like the parrots, the eagle, and also like the small kind like chickadee and yeah, because they are really cute and they can fly.
Nice. I do not have a favorite animal because all animals are created equal.
Okay, that's good.
Nice. God, oh,
I
Godzilla.
like cotton.
Let's see.
Godzilla, I guess they count that as an animal. Cat and dog, puppy, cat, puppies. Yes, seems like the response are quite similar to what we did to what we got last week when we asked for the favorite pet. Nice, puppies and cats. Bear. Okay, that's not the cat, but bears are cool. Do you have a favorite pet, Joshua or Winston?
Okay, first of all, aren't bears cats? I swear they are cats.
Don't think so, right? I think they're a different animal.
Uh,
Bears and
bears,
cats?
cats.
No, that they're not the same animal.
No, yeah, I don't think so.
Cats and
Cats are
tigers and like lions, they are related, but not bears.
yeah, like
Okay.
cats are more like fast compared to like bears, I think. And
Yes,
like,
they are felines.
yeah, and bears are like omnivores, like they eat both like plants and animals,
Yes, we have
I
more
think.
cats and puppies. Nice. All right, I think we can move on to the lesson today.
Okay, so today for science, we are gonna talk about astronomy. So we are gonna go an overview of our solar system.
Yep, some of these will be repetitive if I've been to one of our previous lessons in the summer before, but I think most of you haven't.
Mhm. Okay, so our solar system. So our solar system is part of the Milky Way galaxy. And there's different planet. There's a planet in our solar system. So where it's located is in the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and there's different star, dwarf planets, asteroid, comets, and most importantly, the thing we are looking at today is the eight planets, which is Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. When the solar system is created is 4.6 billion years ago. Billion, just to remind everyone, there's like 90, which, yeah, so a long time ago. That when like how it's formed is when the gravity pull together a cloud of dust and gas together, and yeah. Also for the naming of or the name of the planets, or the planet are named after the Greek and Roman god or goddess. So if you want to explore more planets, feel free to check out NASA. Okay, now what is planets? So planets is the celestial bodies orbited around the sun. So all of them is like circular or elliptical orbit around the sun. And here's the order toward the sun, which Mercury is the nearest to the sun, and Neptune is the farthest away. And this picture is kind of like not that accurate. Like in reality, for example, Mercury and Venus will be really close, but like Neptune and Saturn will be like really, really far away. So like actually like they are really far away from each other. Yeah, in total there's 8 of them. So now we are cover each planet. So feel free to type in chat if you have any question. How old are humans? I'm not sure. Kevin, do you want to like answer that later?
So for humans, it depends on what you count as humans. So what we are right now is called Homo sapiens. Let's see. Homo sapiens first appeared about 300,000 years ago. But if you are counting the earlier, so you see back in the days there were actually many different species of humans. Eventually, for example, the Neanderthals, but eventually all the other ones they died off, and basically us, the Homo sapiens, we are the only type of humans left. And Homo sapiens first appeared 300,000 years ago, but earlier types of humans appeared before that.
Great, thank you, Kevin, for answering that. So now, yeah, feel free to type more questions. And now we are going to talk about our first planet, which is Mercury. So it's the first planet and also the smallest planet. And as we see in the graph in the last slide, is also the closest to the sun. What is made up with? So like 70 per, okay. So you have a really like rocky and solid, as you can see in the picture. And there's also a lot of crater on the surface. And 70% of it is made of the metallic material. And 30% is made of silicate. And the core, like core mean the middle part of the planet, is made of iron, which is one element. Like, yeah. There's also no rings or moon. Rings is like this, like around the Saturn, but Mercury don't have one. And moons is the smaller one that orbiting around the planet. They also don't have one. Let's see. Okay. So it's also the farthest planet. So you know, like in Earth, it takes 365 days for the Earth to orbit around Sun for one time. But for Mercury, it only take 88 days to travel around the sun. So if you like going to Mercury, and a year would be like 88 days. Also, you have a really extreme temperature change due to a weak atmosphere. So like the temperature change like during day and night, like it would be like really large. For the some vocab inside of here, as I mentioned before, crater surface, the crater is the hole and the cavity on the surface, like this black hole. And the silicates, which made up 30% of the planet, is the combination of silicon and oxygen. Yeah. Yeah, Kevin answered in the chat before that our modern human appear around 300,000 years ago in Africa. Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna point out some important point here. Is Mercury don't have an atmosphere. And yeah, we mentioned all of this before, how it's the smallest one, it's rocky, and it only takes 88 days to orbit around the planet, and it's also the closest to the sun. Okay, let's move on to our second planet. So our second planet is the most similar in size among all the planets to the Earth. As you can see in the picture, it's roughly the size as our Earth. So which means they have like almost the same size. So that's why it also called the Earth's sister. Really interesting. Okay, so what's covered around the Venus is a cloud of sulfuric acid, and because there are a lot of greenhouse effect, the surface temperature can reach 450 degrees Celsius, which is really high. Like normally in Earth, it's around like our normal temperature would be like 23 degrees Celsius. But because they have a really like strong and effective greenhouse effect, it can reach 450 degrees Celsius. Okay, like we mentioned before, most of the planet is named after the Roman and Greek goddess, and Venus means love and beauty. Venus also travel faster than Earth. They have one Venus day would be like one Venus year lasts 225 Earth day, and one Venus day lasts 117 Earth day. Yeah, you don't have to remember this, but yeah, like every planet have their different amount of time to travel around the planet and orbit itself.
So there's a question, is it true that Venus is hotter than Mercury? Let's see, Venus is definitely hotter, but I want to see by how much. Wait, can you go back to Mercury? I think there we have the temperature on it. Nope. Well, let me check.
Honestly, though, they're pretty close in terms of temperature.
Okay, so you see, Mercury has a really radical temperature changes. So like when the sun is like shining onto it, it's really hot. But if you're on the side opposite of the sun, it's really cold. But the average temperature is 167 Celsius, which is colder than Venus.
Yeah. So Venus is definitely hotter. Like according to NASA, Mercury have 167 degrees Celsius, but Venus have 464 degrees Celsius, I think, for average. So yeah, Venus is hotter. And also because the greenhouse gases we mentioned before, like they trapped all the radioactive, like the infrared into the atmosphere, and those generate a lot of heat. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Okay, our next planet is our Earth, which is the planet we are living on. It's notable for the liquid water, which we can see in the picture. And as we know, water, ocean, is a large part of, I think, 70% of our whole Earth. And the temperature is also really good. It's just the right distance away from the sun. It's not too hot, not too cold. And with the liquid water, it could support the life, which is why many organisms and uh our human could live on it. So it's a rocky planet with a solid and dynamic surface of mountain, canyons, plains, and there's forests, deserts, and many different biome or like habitat in the water. And um this planet is not named after a god, it's named after the Germanic earth mean the ground, so which mean like the ground, and translated become the earth. And it also have no rings around the earth, but there is one moon, which is the moon we know right now and we see in our skies. There's also a layer of atmosphere around the earth which can protect us from the incoming meteorite, which break up in the atmosphere before they can strike us. Okay. Oh. Okay, so our fourth planet is the Mars. It's also called the red planet because the surface have covered in a lot of red rocks and dust. There's frozen water in. Yeah, feel free to type the question in the chat. Okay. There's frozen water in the Mars, and it's really dusty, cold, and deserted world, and there's a thin layer of atmosphere. Like Earth, we have 4 different seasons. They also have the season, and as we can see here, there's polar ice cap here, and there's also extended volcanoes in there. However, although there's frozen ice on the Mars, but it couldn't support the life at this point. Also on the picture here is the Mars rovers, which is sending onto the Mars.
Yeah, and by the way, NASA is actually trying to land people onto Mars right now. They just had the Artemis launch a few days ago, which is the first step in their new plan to put people onto Mars.
Yep. Okay. So our next one is the fifth planet is the Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. So if we can see here, Jupiter is really large compared to our Earth. It's huge. It can fit 1,300 Earth in one Jupiter. And we have only one moon in Earth, but you have 80 moon, which means the 80 moon like orbiting around the Jupiter at the same time, because it's really huge. It also have the largest moon in solar system, which makes sense because Jupiter is really large, and that largest moon is the double size of our moon we have. What it's made of is made of the gas and which is hydrogen and helium, and there are the stripes here we can see. It's the windy clouds of ammonia and water that form the stripe and the swirl. We can see it here. The atmosphere, it have the atmosphere, which made of hydrogen and helium as well. And we can see in the right picture, there's a really large red dot, and actually there's a really large storm going out there, which is why we can see a red dot over there. There's rings around the Jupiter, but we couldn't see that because it's made of dust, and it's kind of like the color is not that bright that we can see that. Okay, two more point is the average temperature is negative degree, which is negative 238 degrees, and it takes 12 Earth year to travel around the sun. So which means when the Earth orbited around the sun for 12 times, Jupiter only orbit around the Earth, like the sun for 1 times. Okay, Joshua.
All right. Now we're moving on to let me pull up this slide. Yes, now, oh yeah, interesting discussion in chat about whether or not we can live on Mars. Well, I think it's quite possible, but I mean quite possible in our lifetime, but like still going to be very expensive. So like you probably won't see too many people there. Like, I mean you could really build like a little dome on Mars and have like people inside it, have like oxygen, but like that's not very cost effective. You know what I mean? But like, who knows? Maybe in the future, someone has some brilliant idea to make Mars more habitable, like in general, without needing to put on a spacesuit. Right now, if you go on Mars without a spacesuit, you are getting either roasted or frozen. It depends. All right, what are we on again? Saturn. Yes, so Saturn, what's unique about it is that, well, first of all, it's the sixth planet from the sun, but what's unique about it is that it has those fancy, dandy rings around it. And those rings are kind of special because no other planet has them. And kind of like Jupiter, Mars has, no, not Mars, Saturn has a lot of moons around it. And more so than Jupiter, I believe. Jupiter has 80, Mars has 83. And more being, well, I don't know if more and more being discovered now, but like there are certainly more like we know there are more moons on Saturn and like Jupiter than we did back then. Well, it's the second largest planet, so right before Jupiter, and its atmosphere is mostly just hydrogen and helium. Basically, stuff we cannot breathe. So, no living on Mars or on Saturn, unfortunately. But it does have this moon called Titan, which does possibly provide forms of life. It may potentially be habitable with like new technologies or with or maybe it was habitable back then. We don't exactly know for sure because Saturn is still really far away and like sending a spaceship over will take quite a long time. So, well, I'm pretty sure we have sent stuff to Saturn before, but sending like a person there is very difficult to say the least. So because Saturn is obviously further away from the sun, it takes longer time for it to make one loop around it. So it takes a year on Saturn is 29.4 years on Earth. And it's still pretty cold. It's generally a pretty cold planet because of how far away it is. It's negative 285 degrees Fahrenheit. So meaning if you go on it, you will freeze. But I don't think it has that drastic of temperature changes. So most planets, they really do. All right, next slide. All right, now the second or the last planet, the seventh planet, Uranus. It's the seventh planet from the sun, and it's special because it rotates on its side. So basically, think of a normal planet as a top, right? It rotates this way. Well, this planet, it rotates this way. So kind of like when you're roasting some chicken, you put it on a stick and it turns. That's how Uranus is spinning. But normal planets, they spin the other way, kind of like a top. It was the first planet discovered with a telescope. And oh, okay, I did not know that. It has rings too, though I really don't see any on here. Let me search it up. Rings on here. Yeah, it does have rings. They're just not like as, prominent as the ones on Saturn. And yeah. So from what I've heard before, I don't know if this is true anymore, but I believe there was a moon that was going to crash into this planet. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. There was a moon that was orbiting around Uranus that was about to crash into it, like sometime in the future. So I don't know if that's still going on right now.
Well, sometime in the future, the Andromeda galaxy is going to collide with our Milky Way galaxy.
That's true. That's true. And we are losing our moon slowly but surely. All right. And yeah, a telescope is basically that thing you kind of see, like that famous picture of Galileo holding up something to his eyes, staring into the sky. That is basically what a telescope is. It's used to see stuff from very, very far away. So sometimes you don't really necessarily need to be looking upwards to see a planet. Sometimes you can be looking horizontally, like at the horizon, to see the planet, because we don't exactly live in a flat world, and the planets aren't exactly above us per se. So kind of like that. What are the moons? Let me search that up. There's one called Titania, Ariel, Cressida, Oberon, Miranda. I don't actually know where all those names come from. But yeah, those are just some of the ones I found on Google. I think there are more than, there are 27 moons, seems about right. Yeah, they have some interesting names. All right, any other questions? Right, we can move on to the next slide. We'll be answering chat questions in chat too. All right, okay, my bad. I completely forgot about the planet after Uranus. It's Neptune. This is obviously named after the ocean, the Roman ocean god, I believe, the guy under the seas. And anyways, it's the farthest from the sun, so it's like really cold there, and it has a deep blue color. And this color isn't like cold doesn't necessarily mean that something is blue, but it's just the color of the gas in the atmosphere. It was not first discovered by like a telescope. It was first discovered by people doing math, because each planet, they have their own gravitational field, so you can actually calculate like when you should be expecting a planet. So you can actually see Neptune with, like, if you just look up into the skies, unfortunately. So you need to have a telescope in order to see it. And because it's so far away, it takes 165, like for Earth, it's 365 days to go around the sun, right? For Neptune is 165 times 365. So it's like a long, long time for it to orbit around the sun. It has 14 moons and 5 main rings, though the rings, unlike Saturn, they're not exactly too visible. And the rings actually have names: Galilei, Levire, Lasalle, Arago, and Adams. I have no idea where those names come from, but interesting facts. It doesn't actually have a solid surface. So like if you watch any sci-fi space movies, you could see that people land their ships on like a random planet. Unfortunately, you can't do that on Neptune. Like there's nowhere for you to land. And the atmosphere, hydrogen, helium, methane, kind of the ordinary except for methane. But of course, again, not breathable gas at all. Right. So everything actually has their own gravitational field. It's just that some have, like regarding the rings, everything has their own gravitational field, It's just that some are way more stronger than the others. So you don't actually like feel the gravitational field like from the rings. But they probably do produce a slight effect, but like unlike that of the planet, they're rather like small. All right. And Pluto, our last planet, quote unquote, that was discovered in 1930. It used to be the ninth planet because everyone thought it was a planet, right? But it's actually just a dwarf planet. So like not a planet per se. It's just like some kind of object that orbits around the sun. It's like a big object, but like it's not exactly a planet in the solar system, but it still orbits around the sun. So it does have some unique features, such as its elliptical orbit that makes it not a planet. So we call it a dwarf planet instead. The atmosphere, nitrogen, methane, carbon monoxide, sorry, you're not going to be able to live there. Atmosphere is pretty cold, negative 387 degrees Fahrenheit, and actually has a few moons orbiting around it. So it's kind of like an object with like tinier objects orbiting around it as well. Anything could technically orbit around something as long as that thing has enough gravitational pull. And since Pluto is like fairly big compared to like an asteroid or whatever, it does have its own gravitational field as well. And unlike the other planets, it's outside this belt of just asteroids and like space rocks. So it's not exactly in the same like zone that we would consider to be a planet. All right. Now, Pluto is small, but like compared to a rock in space, it's fairly bigger than that. The comets. Comets are they're like kind of like the leftovers. After you form a planet, you have some like leftover pieces of rocks or whatever that are not exactly necessary. And those are what form comets. So comets are mostly made of dust, rock, and ice. And they're like the kind of like the, I don't know, shooting stars that you see. They're like a rock that just flies through space. They're mostly made out of water. So not like drinkable water, kind of like frozen water, because it's like so cold out there in space. You're not going to have like liquid water just floating around. Either they evaporate or you have ice and some few other smaller gases. And you call them a comet because they have this kind of light, bluish glow to it. So they kind of look really pretty up in the sky. And that's why we call them a comet. There are lots of different comets out there. Let me pull up a few names. I actually don't know any of those. But yeah. Comets do come by this like our planet pretty often, or not that often, but like if you check the news, you will be able to see that a planet, a comet will be coming by soon. But yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that one. The Helios comet.
I think it's seen like once every 70 something years.
Yeah.
It's not going to come back anytime soon.
I mean, oh, next time we'll come back is 2061. So, I mean, I think we'll all be alive by then. So it's okay. We can go check it out one day. Only in like 40 years, we're fine. All right. Oh, now we have the sun. We all know what the sun is, right? It's the most important thing in our solar system. We don't have it, we're all going to die. And it's that thing in the middle of the solar system, the shiny red ball that gives off energy, solar energy, which is kind of like the key to all of life. It's pretty big. It's bigger than like all our planets combined, I believe. And it's like a million of times hotter than any of them. 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. It's 4.5 billion years old, and it's made out of just hydrogen and helium. And in another 4 billion years, it will be gone. So you can all be excited for that. How fast is the sun traveling? Well, that is actually a very good question. How fast is the sun traveling? Well, that really depends on what your reference frame is, right? So like compared to our Earth, the sun isn't actually moving, right? Because we are the ones moving around the sun. But like our entire solar system is moving. But then what are we comparing its movement against? We don't actually know. Like the speed that we talk about, it's all relative. So when we talk about the sun, we talk about it as it just not moving. It's like just an empty like a stationary object there. But in reality, everything in this solar system is moving because the entire universe is moving. It all depends on where you look at it. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. All right, the moon. Unfortunately, the moon is just a dusty ball of rock. It's like it doesn't even have its own light. Like we can see the moon shiny and all that. That's because that's the sun like giving off the light. It's not actually the moon itself. But it still looks like that the moon is shining, and that's all we care about. It's the closest object to Earth, obviously. It's only 239,000 of miles away. And it's 1/4 the size of Earth, which is it's still relatively large, like it's still a relatively large object. And if you want to know why we are sending people to the moon, well, that's probably just human curiosity, but Neil Armstrong from the US is the first person to land on the moon. The moon, well, he didn't really see too much on the moon, unfortunately. This like rocky landscape is probably something close to what he saw. But the moon is actually important. So, when if you sail a ship, they'll talk about like high tide, low tide. That's basically how high the water is. And how high or how low the water level is, that depends on the moon, because the moon is a relatively large object and it's pretty close to the Earth. So it has a pretty strong gravitational force on like the objects on the Earth. So it's actually able to pull on the water a little bit. And because it pulls on the water a little bit, once it does pull on the water, that's like when the water like recedes, I believe. And then when it doesn't, the water comes back. So that's why we get fluctuations in how high or low the water is. I saw a very interesting question. What's the proof that the universe is moving? Any mathematicians here? I did not read Einstein.
Proof that the universe is moving?
Well, it's not something for us to do on the whiteboard right now.
So we are not trying to prove that the universe is moving, but we are proving that the universe is expanding and getting bigger. And the reason why we can prove that is because of something called redshift and purple shift, I think. But I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
That's more like physics.
Physics, it's like math. When are the galaxies going to collide? Actually, when are they gonna collide? They're gonna collide. Well,
In like 5 billion years.
yeah. In a while. You don't have to worry about it too much. We're fine. Yeah. All right. If that's all, well, thanks for listening to Science Group today. We'll now be moving to History Group. The History Group, please bring up your slides and start the screen share.
Yeah, feel free to put more question about science we just learned about in the chat. Our tutor can still answer your question. So now we have history.
All right, so let's start with today's history. So you just saw all the different planets are named after a Greek mythology, figures in Greek mythology. Well, in history today, we are going to be talking about ancient Greece and Rome. So here's a simple timeline. We are actually going to come back to this later on. So we are going to first start with the Aegean civilization period of ancient Greece, which is basically the Bronze Age of Greece, which lasted from 3,000 years before Christ to 1,100 years before Christ. So in case you don't know, we are currently in the year 2022, after Christ or Anno Domini or 2022 Common Era. Before the year zero Common Era was called before Christ or before Common Era. And this basically came from when Jesus was born. But yeah, basically 3000 BC will be actually 5022 years ago. And it's called Bronze Age because during that period of time, humans used tools made from bronze. Which is why it was called Bronze Age. And for a brief overview, Asian civilization is the source of all Western culture. It's a general term for the Bronze Age civilizations of Greece around the Aegean Sea, around 7000 to 3000 BC and 3000 to 1000 BC. Here, on the bottom right, you can find a really bad picture of the Aegean Sea. So yeah, this is a better picture. The Aegean Sea, if you know geography, it is in Europe. It is on top of the Mediterranean Sea and below the Black Sea. It is between Turkey and Greece. It is basically surrounded by the places now known as Turkey and Greece. And for anyone else in the history group, feel free to jump in whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, sure. If you just like feel like it, you can just like turn it to like me, I guess. Okay, so for hold on, let me wait, shoot, sorry. I'm okay, yeah. So for I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this quite correctly, Aegean art, it covers two major pre-Greek civilizations, which were the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, which provided like a smooth shift from ancient. Oh, sorry, that was my sister. From ancient Mesopotamian and Egyptian art to Greek art. Egypt was in Africa, and Mesopotamia was also around Africa, I believe. Greek is the Greek civilization, I believe, is above that. Both the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations were influenced by the Greeks and the Egyptians. For example, one of their writing systems were possibly based off of them, and the Mycenaeans were the successors of the ancient Greeks. Aegean art also expressed the cultural values of the people in each civilization. For example, the Minoans showed that their relation to the environment in their art on like things such as pottery and like murals, while the Mycenaeans showed their displays of political power. Next slide, yeah. For the Cycladic civilization, it was from 3200 to 1100 before Christ. Also, for anyone who might be a bit confused, for the before Christ era, the numbers go from big to small for moving forward in time. So for during the early Bronze Age period, the Cycladic culture developed in the region of the Cycladic Islands, which were in the southwestern Aegean Sea, and it was split into three time periods, which were the early Cycladic, middle Cycladic, and late Cycladic. So for the early one, it was divided into three places named after the places where they were originally discovered. So there was the phase Grota Pelos for 3200 to 2800 BC, phase Keros Syros 2800 to 2300 BC, and also I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but Vilakavi 1 phase for 2300 to 2000 BC. For the Middle Cycladic, it was from 2000 to 1500 BC, where all the ports were conducting trade between, not sure if it's Crete or Crete, and the rest of Greece. And for the late Cycladics, the Cyclades were generally influenced by Minoan sea domination. For the Minoan civilization, it was also known as the island of Crete, whichever one it is. The Minoans were from an ancient civilization that prospered in the same time period as the Cycladic, and they also were mainly built on the Crete island, which was once again south of the Aegean Sea, and one of the first advanced civilizations within Europe, since it had they maintained buildings, complex tools, art, writing systems, and also established trade network, and was named after the king Minos, and ended during the early Dark Greek age. So on the bottom right, you can see one of their art. For the Mycenaean Late Bronze Age, it got its name from the citadel of Mycenae in the Peloponnese, where a Mycenae fortified palace was before. It ruled the mainland of Greece as well. For a quick vocabulary word, the citadel was a fortress that can be used during sieges in war to protect the populace from harm. And at around 1600 BCE, which is before Christ era, the shaft graves at the site of Mycenae were built. Down there in the right, you can see the shaft grave, and which were two circular walled plots and named by archaeologists as Grave Circle A and Grave Circle B. They found dead bodies surrounded by a lot of gold objects inside the graves, like masks, necklaces, bracelets, cups, more. And the Greek mainland had an era of prosperity around fortified areas such as Mycenae, since they provided protection and whatnot. In general, during the second half of the 13th century BC, trade declined in the Eastern Mediterranean, likely from the unstable political environment. Does anyone else want to take over?
I'll quickly do the review. So yeah, so as a review, everything we just covered, there were different civilizations from Bronze Age Greece, which again was from 3000 to 1100 BC. And just to clarify again, BC and BCE are the same. They stand for either before Christ or before Common Era. AD and CE are the same. They stand for either Anno Domini or Common Era. We are currently in Common Era. But yeah, before the year 1 or 0 Common Era, it was BCE or BCE. And I actually cannot access the chat right now because Zoom is having some bugs. So can you answer anything in the chat?
Yeah, I'll be monitoring the chat if there's any
Okay.
questions or whatnot.
I can't open it anymore. All right, does anybody want to continue?
I can continue. So here's the history of ancient Greece from the Greek Dark Ages to the Archaic period. The Greek Dark Ages began after the fall of the Mycenaean civilization. They lasted from about 1100 BCE or before Common Era until 750 before Common Era, when the Archaic Ages began. The Greek Dark Ages are also known as the Homer times, which is named after Homer's epic, which is basically a long poem narrating the history of nations and people. In the bottom left, there's the Trojan horse, which is a really famous, I think, story. And to the right is the Odyssey, which is also another really famous story, both from the Homer's epics, I'm assuming. All right, next
Yep, the Odyssey
slide.
is the Homer epic, and Trojan horse is from the Odyssey.
Okay. Archaic period lasted 700 to 480 BCE. So it lasted about 200 years. The polis or city-state was invented during this archaic period, and it also showed significant advances in art, poetry, and technology. The archaic smile, Greek sculptors often carved what is known as the archaic smile onto their figures. It doesn't look realistic and instead represents a sense of well-being. By the Hellenistic period, the archaic smile disappeared from Greek sculpting, and instead they created realistic facial expressions to show emotions on the statues. The archaic smile was also used in the sculptures of other civilizations from this time period, such as the Etruscans near Rome. Here we have the archaic smiles. As you can see, not very realistic. Don't think much people really looked like this during the time. And Hellenistic sculptures, much more realistic than the previous ones.
Yeah, the one on the right, you can see the guy is clearly depressed.
Okay. Ancient Greece city-states. Basically, ancient Greece was divided into like a unique political body, which consisted of city-states instead of like countries or kingdoms. It's a political community, which the city as the unit to form an autonomous or individual state. Among the many city-states in ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta represent two different forms of city-state. They're also probably the most famous out of all of them. Usually city-states are small and most city-states are less than 100 square miles. The biggest city-states are Sparta and Athens, which have an area of more than 3,000 square miles, and Athens has an area of 1,060 square miles. Okay. Athens, their politics where they have a slave democracy, which is a democracy where slavery still exists. Their culture is of ancient European mythology and Olympic Games. And it was also the place where Western philosophy was created. Citizens Congress, every citizen is allowed to put forward their views on the proposal. There are two positions, agree or disagree. After all citizens have voted, the number of votes for and against the proposal is counted. The minority is subordinate to the majority. And then Sparta, which have different politics, and is instead of oligarchy, which is basically where all the power or all the political power is just given to a few people at like the top. Their life is a strict discipline, and they have a very militaristic ideology. So they basically focus mainly on military force and expansion. Their politics, economics, or economy, culture, and education serve the ideological and political system of military expansion and foreign war preparation.
And just by the way, when they're talking about citizens in this case, it's referring to men who are not slaves. They do not consider women to be citizens.
Okay. Classical period, and starting from the Peloponnesian War. The declining relationship between Athens and Sparta led to the Peloponnesian War, which began in 431 BC. The war was a contest between a great sea power, Athens, and its empire, the Delian League, and a great land power, Sparta, and its military coalition of the Peloponnesian League. I think a coalition is like a allyship or something, or a group of people. The first phase of the war ended with a peace treaty in 421 BC. The war broke out again, and around 414 BC, Athens launched an ambitious or like really aggressive expedition in Sicily. This Athenian fleet of ships were destroyed in 413 BCE in Syracuse. Around 440 BCE, Athens surrendered to Sparta. Okay, is there anyone else who wants to go?
I think I could probably take over. All right, okay. So for one of the stories from ancient Greece, right, is the Trojan horse from Homer's epics. So like for a long time ago, ancient cities like Troy, excuse me, were surrounded by high walls made from like stone to keep out enemies and defend their cities better. The only like way to enter easily would be through the gate, because everywhere else you would have to scale the walls and such. The Greeks were trying to invade the city of Troy for a very long time. Came up with a plan in order to get inside the walls. So they created a wooden horse and pretended to be defeated, and gave the horse as a tribute to the Troy. The Troy people accepted it and wheeled in the horse into their city. But instead, the horse was actually had soldiers full inside of it. And while during the night when the Trojan population slept, the people inside, which were Greek soldiers, they jumped out and they went to open the city gates and let the entire Greek army in and destroyed Troy.
I think before this, they had been fighting for 9 years, which was a very long time. And yes,
Yeah,
that
so
covered.
no, you
Oh,
can.
sorry. Yeah, I just want to quickly do the review. So that covered the Archaic period and the Classical period, and also the Dark Ages of Greece. And oh yeah, that's it. I guess that's the end of our lesson today. If you have any questions, please ask in the chat. We will also highly appreciate it if you could provide some feedback on the difficulty of each group's lessons. If it's too easy, too hard, or the right difficulty. And if you still have any questions, feel free to ask in chat. But other than that, we should be done today. Thank you for coming and come back next week.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Feel free to stay after if you have any other question.
Oh yeah, and for anyone, if they have any topics that they're interested in for science or history, please feel free to leave it in chat or just like tell us, unmute and tell us.
Yeah, if you have anything else about astronomy, biology, pop culture, history, anything you want to learn about, we can, yeah, feel free to type those in the chat so we can plan our lesson based on those.
Yes, but after that, you are free to go now. Thank you for coming and see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.